Okay, I'm Kimberly with Skiatook Bee Supply, and this is Dutch with
Mystic Mountain Homestead.
And we are doing a little video today about when you get a nucleus colony of bees, how to set this up when you get the nucleus colony in, and what you need to do. So one of the first things that when we get our nucleus colony, and we've got a class here today, so I'm going to be addressing the class. So this is a nuke mesh bag, and this is great for transport because what happens, these boxes that we put nukes into, I have not seen one produced yet that doesn't leak bees. So this is a great bag to do that. These are specially made for the bees because it's a really small knit. And you can put the nuke in here. One nuke fits in here. And we put those in. We want to make sure that the seam here is on the sides, not the bottom. We can slide it in, draw it up, and the bees that leak out won't be in the cab of your truck or your car, or you don't have to worry about trying to roll your windows down and hope they find the colony. So that's the purpose of these nuke mesh transport bags. And I've had people bring them back, you know, when they buy nukes year after year, or, you know, anytime they purchase a nuke, they bring those nuke transport bags back. So one of the things we're going to do is talk about the setup of the hive first, because you want to have your hive kind of pre-set up when you bring your nuke home. And when you bring your nuke home, you don't want to set it on the garage floor or on the front porch and leave it till morning. It needs to be put exactly on top of your hive, facing the direction, the opening on the nuke box, if it's too late for you to actually put them into the hive that evening. And we do this, of course, in the evening just because we want the bees, most of the field bees, to be in. So we're going to set it on top of our hive, and we're going to let them face the direction that they would normally face when they're in the hive. And then I would advise you to strap that hive down, because we are in Oklahoma here and we do have high winds. And I have had a student in the past that we had a rainstorm and it blew his nuke off the top. He just brought it home, set it down, and that was it. It was going to wait till morning. And he woke up to no bees because they had been rained on and blew over, and the combs had all been out, and so they were destroyed. So we're going to talk about when you put them in, whether you do it tonight or you do it first thing in the morning. When I say first thing in the morning, I do not mean at 6 o'clock in the morning when it's still dusky, dark out. Wait till the sun's up good. Go out and put your bees into your colony. So you're going to set this 5-frame Jester, it's what they're in, it's called, name of the box. It's a plastic Jester nuke box. You're going to set it down off of the top of the hive, and you're going to take the lid off just like I did. Now, we use the screen top beetle guard here at Skiatook Bee Supply, and I advise most students to use that because it helps keep the hive beetles out. So you're going to have this on, and one thing we're missing here today that I'm out of is a propolis trap. Now most of you will have a green propolis trap. There for a little bit I had some brown ones because during COVID I couldn't get the green ones. But it looks like a plastic queen excluder, except and don't get them confused, the little spaces are much smaller on the propolis trap so that the bees cannot get through it. It's to protect your screen is what it's for, what we're using it for. So let's talk about what's inside the hive. Your colony is going to have 5 frames of drawn comb with brood on them. Okay, there's going to be brood, there's going to be a little honey, there's going to be a little nectar, there's going to be a little pollen, there's going to be lots of bees, okay? And a working queen laying eggs in there. So we're going to have 5 frames in it. You're going to take these frames and you're going to only have 8 frames total, because when we put those 5 frames in here, you're going to have 3 extra frames. And then the space here for 2 frames is this feeder. And the feeder always goes to one side, not in the middle, because if you put it in the middle, it divides the colony. We do not want to divide the colony. They won't grow. They won't work well. It's almost like having 2 different colonies in one hive. The growth will be terrible. So always put it to one side. Then we have a frame of foundation, but we're going to also take a frame of brood, and we're going to checkerboard. Everybody remember what checkerboarding is? A frame of drawn brood, a frame of foundation, a frame of brood, a frame of foundation. And when I say brood, it could be honey, it could be pollen within this 5 frames. But the brood, if you get the frames with the brood on it that has half brood, then what happens is that when they hatch, they're going to draw out this comb. And if they don't draw out this comb, they won't have cells. Now remember, cells are the key here, because they use the cells for storage of honey. They use it for storage of pollen. They put water in there in the heat of summer. They use those to lay their eggs so that the babies have a place to develop. That is their nursery. So you have to get this drawn comb out. So you're going to checkerboard those 5 frames in with those 3 extra frames. Now that's not a lot, you might think, but you're going to take 2 frames and just set them to the side like what we have here. We'll take those and we'll store those, and we'll come back later when we get this box full. So what you want to do is you got all your frames in here with your foundations checkerboard. You want to push them all to one side. Okay, up tight, because if you don't push them up tight, then and you leave them gapped open, then they're going to draw comb out in between, and you'll never get all your frames in. And we want to get as many frames so we can have as much cell production and drawn comb as possible, so that the bees will be productive and have lots of young brood. So we're going to push them all to the side nice and tight, and the feeder goes pushed up right next to the side, right up against them also, okay? So we want everything nice and tight in there. Now this is a hive beetle trap. I would suggest you use it. We have bad hive beetles here. Matter of fact, I had somebody call me last night and said overnight they got back into their hive, which I don't recommend you get into the hive constantly and try to go through it. But I have some new beekeepers that are just really super excited, and they noticed that overnight, by the end of the next day, that they had some hive beetles in there. And so we want to guard against that. Hive beetles fly, hive beetles crawl. So if you're in a shaded area, you don't want your hive in shade all day. You want it full sun as much as possible. Set your hives now where you need them to be, because moving hives is not an easy thing. You can't just say, oh, I decided I want it over here, because if you do that, then the bees still think that this is where home is, and you'll have a big wad of bees. So figure out where you want them before you place them, okay? Double think it, look at it, check it, make sure. So these are hive beetle traps. These are disposable, and we're going to use hive beetle bait oil in there. It's got bait in the bottom. Shake it. It doesn't seem like a lot, but just a little bit goes a long way in here. So you shake it, and then you're going to fill it half full. We fill it only half full because we don't want this expanding in the heat of summer and oozing out into our hive and spilling over. If you get oil on the top of this, wipe it off with your glove, away from the hive, fill it away from the hive, and then I like to put one on one side, and I drop this one, and then we'll fill it, and then I like to put it here. Now the reason why we put them there is because most of the work and activity is going to be right in the center of the hive. And so these sides are not as protected from the hive beetles, because the bees are kind of controlling them more in the middle, and they still control them, but they like to run to the sides to get away from the bees. So that gives us an opportunity. Let's talk about the feeder right quick. We're going to feed 1-to-1 sugar water. This is springtime. There is a nectar flow on, but we're still going to feed, especially if you do not have drawn comb. And these are all foundations, except the ones that you're going to be putting in there will be drawn. The foundations, we want them to draw those out. When I say draw, we mean make cells out of beeswax. And so by feeding them, you're helping them. And what we're going to do is we're going to feed them until they've almost filled out all those 3 extra frames. And then we're going to bring on our second deep box. And we're going to put that on. Now, this could happen as quickly as 2 weeks if you're feeding and watching your bees closely. They should be fed weekly. You're going to fill this with 1 gallon. Don't just put a quart in here. Put 1 gallon of sugar syrup, 1-to-1. Use the essential oil mix that I've given you the recipe for. It's on my Facebook page at Skiatook Bee Supply. So you can go to there and look at that honeybee healthy recipe if you've lost that or misplaced it. And that is a tonic. It is not food. The food is 1-to-1 sugar syrup. The tonic that we're going to be adding to it is the Honeybee Healthy with a mix of essential oils in it. And we're going to put 8 teaspoons of that into 1 gallon of sugar syrup and feed them every week. Now, if they get to a point where they're slowing down the intake, you know, or the syrup, it gets too hot out and it starts smelling like a fine wine, you're going to need to dump that out and give them some fresh. If they're not taking it in, we are in a nectar flow, I suspect they will take it in. As long as they're growing and everything is good, that is great. If you get into a situation where you think the growth has slowed down and they're not taking in sugar syrup, you need to be on the phone to me so that we can make sure everything is going right, because we want to make sure that they are staying healthy. So this is how we're going to set this up. If you'll notice, we have the California bottom here, and the California bottom has a tray in it, okay? And it's vented, so it keeps it cooler. But this tray in the bottom, you're going to pull it out, and you're going to add just inexpensive cooking oil. It can be canola, it can be corn. Don't use your fine olive oils. Your spouses will probably kill you. But, you know, just a cheap cooking oil can go in the bottom of that. You're going to fill it up to the top of the baffles on that tray. Slide it in. Make sure you slide that tray all the way in. If you are having trouble with a raccoon pulling open that tray or something like that, occasionally that does happen, get you a little block of wood and a screw gun and drill a little hole in the middle of it and make a little lever where you can kind of hold it in if you run into that. Most of the time we don't, but occasionally it does happen. So we want to use that tray. We want to make sure it's in well so bees don't get in there and the oil and drown. That's meant for the hive beetles and the varroa mites to drown in. And they're very effective if they're used properly. Okay, so let's talk about...
How often do you pull them out to clean?
When it gets thick and the hive beetle can't drown in the oil, if it can walk across the top of the oil, it's time to change that tray. I would take it over and dump it, you know, somewhere away from the hives, and just wipe it out with some paper towels or something like that. It does not have to be spick and span clean, because the bees are not supposed to actually access it, but you can pour fresh oil in it and slide it back in. If you want to clean it, you can.
I might mention, don't pour it on the grass, it kills the grass.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Grass in the fence line that you want to get rid of.
Yeah,
there you go. Okay, so let's talk about the entrance of the hive. So this is how the entrance would be, and we have a entrance reducer here. There is 2 settings. We have a wider setting and we have a smaller setting. And everybody always asks me, which one should I use? Well, I almost always suggest that you go with the smaller setting. You call me, I'm like smaller setting, because this protects your bees. Your bees, yes, they have to work harder to get in and out. But most new beekeepers don't recognize what a really strong hive is, and so they think that their hive is strong, whether it is or not. So I almost always tell you this. Now, if you manage to get your box to 3 deep brood boxes high, because sometimes that happens, we call those super hives. If it's that hive and every box is full of bees, wall to wall, back to back, frame to frame, then I might say, yeah, let's go ahead. And I might even say, let's put some other entrances on the back or up above to give the bees another entrance and still use this one. But this is a standard entry for a hive. This is called an entrance reducer, and it fits in just like that. Now, that's fine for now. We're in a nectar flow. But come June 21st, or if the rain shuts off and we're not getting weekly rains and showers to keep flowers blooming and things growing and progressing, we could go into kind of a dearth where things are drought-like, there's not enough flowers, not enough food for the bees, and that means that a weaker hive, which yours are young hives, they're not mature, they may get robbed by other bees. It could be your neighbor's bees, it could be a tree that is in the woods close to you. You know, bees will travel up to 4 or 5 miles. So the thing to do is use this robbing screen. A robbing screen has a notch at the top, it has this notch at the bottom, and this is kind of a cool piece of equipment, because what we do is we put it on just like this, and we use a strap, ratchet strap, and go around the hive and ratchet it on. It will have the belt kind of across here. So what happens is this notch here up against the entrance, and we take the entrance reducer out for this, by the way, the bees will, the robber bees, will just smell that sweetness at this wider gap here. They'll smell the honey. They can smell all the pheromones coming at it. And they just do this 1980s rock band headbanging thing right here, right? They want to get in, and it's like when you're at the movies and you smell popcorn and you only have $1 in your pocket, and it's $2.50 for a small, right? They just want to get in there and steal that honey. And if they start getting in there, they will kill and fight with your bees, and you will lose your colony. So this becomes a very important piece of equipment at that time. So during a dearth or any time that you are worried about robbing, put this on at night. Don't put it on in the middle of the day, because then your bees won't be able to figure out how to come and go. But if you put this on at night, then your bees can figure that out.
Helps with wax moths too, doesn't it?
It does, actually. Didn't you have a problem with wax moths in your hive? Yeah, it actually helps keep wax moths out. Now, it's not a guarantee that they won't get in. Some of the small ones might fit through the screen, but when a hive is weak, this can actually make a difference against wax moths too. But this is an extra protection for your colony, and most new beekeepers don't really recognize what robbing looks like. Because to them, they say, oh, I just see bees coming and going, and they don't realize that they're being robbed out. So this could be a very good piece of equipment. This is called a robbing or moving screen, because if you flip it around the other way, this flat side will fit up against the front of your colony. And let's say that for some reason that you sold a hive, or you were moving a hive to a friend's house, because I just got a phone call tonight to somebody that a friend has a field of clover in bloom, and they're moving their hives there to that field of clover to work that clover. In order to move them, you would flip this around and use the other side of the screen, and this allows plenty of airflow in the hive so that they can breathe, because remember, bees breathe, bees drink, and bees go out and go to the bathroom as well.
Should we put that on for the first 3 days to keep them in?
No, you don't want to keep them in. You're going to take them home, and if you don't put them in the hive tonight, you're going to open them up and let them fly. Those boxes get hot, and we don't want them to suffocate. You know, these boxes of bees are pretty packed, and that's a great thing. And you're not always going to, when you purchase Nucs, you don't always find how this packed. So you don't recognize how good you have it when you look at this hive, okay? But I'm telling you, okay, so we're going to, right now you can use the entrance reducer, but stay on top of this robbing thing, because it can happen, and I've been seeing it the last 2 or 3 years. So we're going to put the entrance reducer in. We're going to put, in order to put our propolis trap on, before we do that, we're going to go to a little nearby tree. We're going to break off 2 little sticks from a tree about the size of a pencil or pen, okay? And then right here where these bands are on our feeder, we're going to lay them like this. We're going to put one here too. Then we're going to put the propolis trap down. Now, the reason for this is because when it gets hot out, that propolis trap is made out of plastic, and when it gets hot, it kind of lays flat. It'll shut off your feeder. We don't want to ever shut off our feeder to the bees. So you'll put those on, put your propolis trap on, so that keeps that open. And then we're going to put on our screen top beetle guard, okay? This keeps beetles from entering through the top of the hive. Yes, Mike?
On your propolis trap?
Yes.
Do the little nits go up or down?
Down.
They go down.
Yes, and it those little things on that one, and the brown ones do have like little knobs or knobs on there. Those actually help hold it a little bit up off, but I would still go ahead and put the little sticks in there. That was a very good question on that. Okay, so then we have our screen top beetle guard. This keeps hive beetles from entering at the top of the hive, and they will try. So we're forcing them through the front door, because they will fly, land on the front entry, and go right on in like they own the place. And so this forces them through that entry, and chances are they're going to fall into the oil. So this kind of keeps them from coming in through the top. Now, after that, we're going to add our telescoping lid. So we're going to put the lid on, make sure you get it on there good like this. You can kind of feel for it. And then I want you to strap this baby down. I'm going to set those right there. We're going to strap it down. We're going to put a ratchet hook here and a ratchet hook here. and strap it down. Because when this gets up here with your honey supers on it, we're going to still keep our ratchet strap on it. If a deer runs by and knocks it over, it's going to stay together. If a windstorm blows it over, it's still, at least they're still together. They're not spread out with rain getting in them and stuff like that. And I have had a hive go over before, and thank goodness I had it strapped down. So do that. Your hive stand should go on some paving stones. Make sure you get it level so your oil doesn't all run out in that tray. Okay, is there any questions about anything that we've talked about?
If we put the robber front on, can we just leave it on all season? Or do you really need to take it off? And
you can. Okay. If you see, though, that the bees are getting backed up in there, like if they're trying to push dead bees out, because bees, in the height of summer, they live six weeks. And sometimes bees will come back to the colony and then die inside the colony, and some of the housekeeping bees will take them out. Sometimes they have trouble getting them out of there. So always be able to, pop that off and clean that area out. So anytime, put your hives where you can walk by them, and on a daily basis, you're kind of looking at the front of the hive. You're noting the activity, you're noting what's going on, how many bees are in the screen, what's going on around your hive. That's a good thing to note. Any other questions?
The rubber screen, I thought you said just put it on at night.
No, you put it on at night. If you don't put it on from the go, and I have beekeepers that put it on from the go and leave it on. But if you decide not to do that, then when you do put it on, make sure you do it at night when all the house bees are in. Because the ones that are out in the field, they come back, they can't figure out how to get in either. But if they're in and they have to crawl around and figure out how to come and go, then they're going to remember that. And then the robbers won't.
So the rubber screen you can leave on.
You could, if you were going to decide to put that on. Remember, you take off the entrance reducer if you're putting on the robbing screen. Any other questions?
Is it better if you're having multiple hives to have the entrances going opposite directions?
Not necessarily opposite directions. When we took a basic beekeeping class, we talked about, hives that when they're set up, lined up in a line, and we have maybe southern winds in this early summer and spring, and they're blowing really hard. We've had a lot of wind this year. Sometimes those bees will be loaded with